Hello, it's Moira here, and in this video tutorial we're going to learn how to add stripes into daisyknots pot design. Adding in stripes to our pot just gives it a slightly different feel to the design, and also adds more texture in. We can add the stripes in wherever we want. I mean, on the chart I've added the stripes in at row 6 and row 10, but it really is up to you to decide where you wish to add those stripes in. The stripes are created by working a strand of chain stitches and then weaving this strand underneath the vertical stripes of colour A. This is the pot that I'm going to be demonstrating my stripes on, and we can see that we've got a few different rows that we could add our stripes in. Row 6, row 8, row 10 or row 12. I'm not 100% certain yet on which rows I'm going to add my stripes into. So, checking out my instructions, the first thing I need to do is measure the circumference of my pot. Now, we're only really looking for a rough measurement. It doesn't have to be exact, because I do show you if you actually make your chain strand a little bit too long, how we can actually work around that. So the measurement I'm looking for my pot is 49 centimetres. To make my strand of chain stitches, I'm using a 6mm hook and 2 strands of the drops Paris, which is what I actually worked the actual pot in. It was worked in 2 strands too. So I'm working with exactly the same hook and yarn weight as I did in the actual pot itself. A little tip here: if you don't want to be working with 2 balls of yarn, I actually pull the yarn from the centre and have the yarn from the outside. So I'm only working with 1 ball of yarn, but I get 2 strands. One's from the centre and one's from the outside. When making your strand of chains, do make sure that your chains are even. Don't have your chains all uneven, because you will notice this when you actually place them into the position that you want in the pot. Nice even chain stitches is what you're looking for, and when you get to the length of your strand, do not finish your yarn. We will finish it later. Now I've got my 49 centimetres of chain stitches, I can decide where they're going to go on my pot. I can play around with this strand of chain stitches, deciding where exactly I am going to put them. I know I'm definitely going to put a strand up at the top there in row 12. I think I'm going to put a strand down in row 6, but I'm not 100% certain that, because it might look better on row 8. But I'm going to, in the meantime, work and put my strand, the first strand that I've created, into row 12. Now, for weaving in my strand of chain stitches, I use a big-eyed needle that's also got a blunt end. But don't worry if you don't have this, you can actually use a crochet hook too. If you are using a big-eyed needle like I am, it is better if you can actually catch that first slip knot through the eye of the needle too. It just makes life easier when you're actually doing the weaving. The first thing I'm going to do is insert my needle underneath that vertical stripe of colour A, and that I do as I go along, I make sure my strand of chain stitches are lying the correct direction, and I do this after every time I pull my strand through. If you go slowly, it makes life a lot easier, because you can see if there's any twist on it. You can see there was a slight twist there. So you're going to be inserting your hook or your needle underneath that strand of vertical treble stitches that you created when you were actually making your pot. Keep working your way around your pot, weaving in your strand of chain stitches, and when you get back to the beginning, you probably will have a slight overlap of your chain stitches. Don't worry, this is perfectly normal. Now I'm back more or less at the beginning. We can see that I've got quite a large overlap of chain stitches. But that's not a problem, as I had not finished off my yarn, so I can now just pull back the chain stitches to the length that I want it to be. I want the join in my stripe to be actually under one of the verticals. That way I will have a seamless join. And we can see by my sample here that the vertical to the left of where my start was is where I'm going to actually tuck it under. So I've still got a few chain stitches to pull back yet, so I'm just going to do that very gently so that I don't go back too many stitches. Now I'm happy that that's the length of the strand of stitches that I need. I'm just going to cut off my yarn, and I'll finish it off in a minute. I'm just going to hold fire until I actually get the rest of the strand woven under those last two verticals. I'm just going to confirm that the strand of chain stitches are the length that I want them to be, and they are, because they're going to line up very neatly underneath that vertical treble. I'm now going to finish off the yarn for my chain stitches. So there we go, I've completed that chain stitch. I can finish off by pulling those two ends through to the inside of my pot, and I'm going to use a hook to do this. So I'm going to pull through the end that I finished last, and I'm just going to pull those strands of yarn through to the inside of my pot. They will be woven in a few minutes' time. I'm now ready to take the beginning of my strand that's got the slip knot in it, and I'm going to first of all pull it through underneath the vertical treble. I'm doing this to ensure I get an overlap. And now I'm ready to pull those two ends through to the inside of my pot, and they can be woven in. I've turned the pot inside out so I can now weave in these strands of yarn. Now, because we worked with two strands of yarn, we do have double the amount of strands to weave in. I tend to weave them in one at a time. It just makes it easier because it's actually quite hard darning in two strands of yarn together. Once you've completed the weaving in of all your strands, turn the pot the correct way round. And there we go, our first stripe to our pot has been added. I'm back now with my second strand of chain stitches, and now because I've actually positioned the first strand, I can actually decide where I'm going to place this strand of stitches. I think I'm going to actually place it there on row 8. I think I prefer it there to row 6. So row 8 is where I'm going to actually insert this strand of chain stitches. So it's always better to actually put one strand in first before you decide where the second strand and even the third strand is going to go. I'm now weaving in the second strand of chain stitches, just like I did for the first stripe. And remember, if your strand of stitches is slightly too long, it's not a problem because you haven't finished off that yarn, so you just pull back the stitches to the length you need them to be. And finally, my completed pot with my two stripes. Thank you for watching this video tutorial, and if you found it useful, please do subscribe to Daisyknots channel. Thank you.